If you're looking to build a space to record audio, there's one thing that's going to be unavoidable that you're going to have to look into purchasing. And in this video, I'm going to cover what an audio interface is, why you need one, and what it does. Check it out. Hey, my name is Matthew Stratton, helping you create music and record audio. On this channel, I'll do setup videos and tutorials and different reviews about audio gear. So if you're new to the channel, consider subscribing. So what is an audio interface? So an audio interface is a device that takes analog signals and converts those analog signals into digital signals, and it sends those digital signals into your computer. And this way, your computer can receive the signals and record those signals into a digital audio workstation. Now, a digital audio workstation is software in the computer that can record audio, and it can also be called DAW or DAW. Such popular ones are Pro Tools, Ableton Live, Cubase, Reaper, etc. So let's take a closer look at the Focusrite 2i2. You can see I have it here on the desk. It's a simple audio interface, and you'll see there are several cords around this audio interface as well as headphones. Now, I will leave a link in the description for all these items in case you're curious about what I am using in this video, so be sure to check the description for show notes for this video. But let's go ahead and take a closer look at this audio interface. So you can see the top of it here simply says Focusrite, simple branding. Now on the sides, there are nothing. On the bottom, there are feet. All right, there's just rubberized feet. And then you got inputs on the front, some other controls as well. And then you have outputs on the back, and these go into speakers. Now, let's go ahead and take a closer look of what is on the front of the device and what you can actually plug into this thing. If you're using a Windows PC, you need to install the drivers before you're going to be able to use your audio interface with your computer in most cases. So I'll leave a card at the top of the screen if you need more information on how to install your USB audio interface with your PC computer. Now, once you have your drivers installed, what you should do is go ahead and make sure that your cable is plugged in. Now, some audio interfaces are going to have USB. Actually, most of them right now do have USB. And in some older audio interfaces are going to be FireWire. New popular interfaces now are going to be Thunderbolt 3. This one is just a simple USB device, and you can plug this directly into your computer. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. And I do want to briefly mention that when you do set these up, it's best to go directly from your audio interface to your computer and to not go through a USB hub. And if you do have to go through a USB hub, make sure that your USB hub is powered, and that way you're going to get plenty of power to your device. But I do recommend going straight from your device to your computer. So when you're recording audio in your home studio, one of the most common things you're going to use to record is a microphone. All right, so this is a Rode NT1. It is a condenser microphone. And what I'm going to be able to do is plug this microphone into one of the inputs of this audio device, and then I'm going to be able to record inside of my software. Now, to do this, I do need a microphone cable, and this is a microphone cable here. Now, this mic cable does have these nice connectors on it, and that's one of the things you want to look out for when you get mic cables is basically these connectors, because it makes connecting your microphone very simple. And if you look, I want to take this end of the mic cable and plug it directly into the microphone. All right. And then I'm going to take the other end and plug it into the audio interface. Now, this particular cable is an XLR cable, and it goes nice and neat into the input of this device here. And that's one thing I want to explain about audio interfaces is that you're going to have input devices that you're going to plug your analog gear into. Now, these inputs can be a number of different things, but this particular one has a multi-jack. So it's like a combo input device. So you can plug a microphone into it, you can plug a line level into it, and you can plug a guitar into it or instrument level into it. Now, in this case, I plugged a mic into it, and you can see that this is channel 1. There is an actual number 1 here. So that indicates input channel 1, and then over here there's a 2, so that indicates input channel 2, and you'll see there are buttons that go for each one of these inputs, and there is a gain knob here. Now, this gain knob makes it to where you can have a nice strong signal for your microphone. So say that this microphone level was really low, you could turn up your gain knob and get a good strong signal. Now, what I want to talk about right now is this particular microphone is a condenser microphone. So on this interface, there is a button that says 48V. That stands for 48 volts phantom power. If I push that, it's going to enable me to get a signal from my condenser microphone here. All right, now what I want to do now is just talk into the microphone. Check, check. Now you'll see there is a green indicator on here, and that's going to start glowing when I get a good signal. And right there, it's starting to glow green. So that means I'm starting to get a signal into here. And so that means that if you have a condenser microphone, you need to get an audio interface that has the 48 phantom power for your microphone. So you need to know what you need when you're looking to get an audio interface. Now, if you're using a dynamic microphone, you don't necessarily need to have that phantom power. But in this case, you do need the phantom power, and there is a button for it there. Now, I do want to mention that your inputs on your audio interface are very important, and you can call these preamps, okay? And your preamps are very important because it's going to affect the sound of your microphone, the sound of your audio going into your software, okay? So if you have a really cheap interface, the preamps might not be so great, and you might not get that high of a quality of sound. Something like the Focusrite is mid-tier. You're going to get a good clean sound with that, and it's going to be definitely usable inside of your music production. All right, so that's how you set your gain there. Now, there is a better way to set gain for your audio interface if you have a DAW or if you're using a digital audio workstation, and that is to actually use your digital audio workstations to set your gain, because it's going to give you a more accurate read than just a green light that maybe turns red when it's clipping. All right. But that's beyond the scope of this video. I just want to tell you what an interface does in general. All right. Now, if you look down here, there is an instrument button and there is a air button. Now, your instrument button is for if you want to plug in an electric guitar directly into here. You can actually plug an electric guitar directly into here. That is what I have this cable for here. All right. So this is an instrument cable, and I can actually plug this cable directly into here. And what that's going to enable me to do is it's going to enable me to plug my electric guitar directly into this audio interface. And the cool thing about that is inside of your digital audio workstation, you can use plugins to simulate guitar amps and guitar effects. And so it's a really cool thing that you could do with audio interfaces. You don't have to have a huge cabinet in your bedroom. You can actually simulate a huge cabinet inside of your software, and you can get a nice big guitar sound using amp simulators inside of your software, which is really cool. And then what you would just do is take the other end of this cable and plug it into your electric guitar. Ow. All right, so I have my Affinity Telecaster here. What I can do is just plug this directly into the guitar. So if you look at the front of it here, when I play the note, you don't see anything, right? But what I need to do is actually push this button. This is the instrument button. So once I press that button, it's going to change the impedance of this to high Z. And then I can turn up the gain. All right, now you can see it starting to grow green. All right, so now we're getting a signal from the guitar into the audio interface. Now, this particular audio interface does have an air button. That's just specific to this audio interface. And that function is kind of beyond the scope of this video. All right, so that's the inputs of an audio interface in a nutshell. All right, so you can record microphones, you can record instruments, and you can even record synthesizers that are line level. Now, I didn't show that in this example, but you could take a synthesizer that goes line level out, or a drum machine that has line level out, and plug it into here. And I do highly recommend, if you want to record synthesizers and drum machines, to get an audio interface that has at least 2 line inputs, so you can use left and right inside of this. Okay, that's highly recommended. Now, an audio interface can have more than 1 or 2 inputs. It can have 4 inputs, 6 inputs, 8 inputs. It can have a ton of inputs, and you can actually have digital inputs as well. I'm going to leave a card up here. So look up at the top of the screen. I'm going to leave a card about audio interface inputs, and I'll leave it in the description below, a link to a video where I actually talk about inputs on audio interfaces and go more into depth about that. All right, so we covered the inputs of the device. Let's go over monitoring. So right here, it says monitor, and you got a knob here and a knob here. So this first knob is for the levels of your outputs. So on the back of this particular device, there are outputs. Okay, we have a right output and a left output. So what we can actually do is take cables and plug these into the outputs. Now, these particular cables are balanced cables, and I'm going to actually plug these into the back of here. Now, I'll leave these in the description as well, but if you look, this right here says right. I want to plug that into there, and then you can take the other end and plug it into Studio Monitors. All right, and then you can take another cable like so, and you can plug it into the other output. In this case, it is the left output, so let me go ahead and show you that. This is the right output over here. This is the left output here. All right, and it's clearly indicated on the back. It says line out, right and left. And what you can actually do is go ahead and plug this other cable into your left speaker. Now the Focusrite 2i2 has two balanced outputs. Your interface might have a different kind of output, so you need to make sure that you research what your interface has. But this particular one has two balanced outputs, and the speakers I'm using have balanced inputs. So therefore, I'm using balanced cables to go out of the Focusrite into the speakers, and that's going to give me a nice clear signal from the Focusrite into the speakers. And this way we can monitor actually what we're going to record, and we can monitor anything that's going on inside of our digital audio workstation. So if you look at the front of the Focusrite Scarlett, right here there is a monitor knob. Now this knob is for the outputs on the back, for these outputs. And then over here, there's a smaller knob, and that knob is for headphones. I have some headphones here, so I can actually plug my headphones directly into there and then use this volume knob to control the output of the headphones. Now, you'll notice right here, it says direct monitor, and there's a button. When I turn this on, I'm going to be able to monitor a mono signal or a stereo signal. Now, since a microphone is a mono input, if you put this on mono, or where it has one circle here, you're going to be able to hear this device in both your left and right speakers. If you put it on stereo, you're going to be able to hear both your input 1 and input 2 separately. All right, so that's going to be really handy when you start recording. You're going to be able to hear, for example, your guitar directly as you're recording it, and you're going to be able to hear whatever's going on in the background as you're recording as well. So this way, if you have drums laid down in the background, you can play your guitar to those drums. You can hear directly what you're playing from the guitar, and you can hear the drums. And this way you could play on time. And this is why monitoring is important, because you want to be able to hear what you're recording as far as your microphone, if you're recording vocals, or as far as your guitar, if you're recording a guitar track. But you also want to hear what you're recording to. For example, if you're recording to a drum beat in the background, you want to hear that drum beat so you can play in time to that drum beat, and you can have a perfectly in time and synchronized performance to that drum beat. So some audio interfaces do have inputs and outputs for MIDI devices. So you're going to see MIDI in and MIDI out on some audio interfaces, and that's good for you as well if you do want that option. And consider, if you do have those extra features, the price of your interface is going to go up. Now, I do want to mention that your audio interface can have multiple inputs as well as multiple outputs. So this 2i2 has two outputs, one for your left channel and one for your right channel. All right, and you plug those into your speakers. Now, you can have more than two outputs. Like, for example, you can get an interface that has outputs 3 and 4 as well as 1 and 2. So you can have 1 and 2 go to your speakers. And if you want a click track to go to your headphones, for example, you can have output 3 or 4 as your headphone, and then you can listen to the click track in your headphones, and you won't hear that through your speakers. So that's something to keep in mind when you are looking into purchasing an audio interface. If you're finding value in this video, remember to give this video a thumbs up. It's going to help this video and the channel out. And if you know somebody who might need this information, consider sharing it. It's going to help out as well. You know, I just want to help people make music, and I want to help people record their audio. So I do appreciate you for sharing and liking this video. So now I want to get into some of the details that you might hear about and read about when you're discovering audio interfaces. And namely, I want to talk about latency, sample rate, and your buffer size. So if you look inside of Ableton Live Lite here, the Ableton Live Lite comes with the Focusrite Scarlett 2i2, by the way. I'm going to go to the preferences, and then I want to pick the Focusrite USB ASIO driver. Now, if you look here, we got a few things going on. We got our input. So these are the inputs 1 and 2 on the front of the device. Okay, and then we got our output. This is the output 1 and 2 on the back of the device. And then we have our hardware setup. We can click that and we can set our sample rate and buffer size with that. Now we can also set our sample rate right here. All right, so I want to cover this very briefly. Whenever you have anything going into your audio interface, so it could be a microphone, guitar, a synthesizer, that's sending an analog audio signal into your interface, and your interface is actually converting that into a digital signal, and that's going to be your digital audio conversion. And that takes a certain amount of time to do. And whenever it's doing that, there's a file that's going to end up being on your hard drive of your computer, and that file is going to have a sample rate attached to it. And your sample rate is how many times a second that your digital file looked at the analog signal. So for example, I currently have it set at 44,100 samples a second. So inside of my digital file, it's going to have a sample rate of 44,100. It's basically 44,100 times that analog signal was sampled. And that's standard for a CD. So therefore, if you record at 44.1 kilohertz, that's going to be a good rate to go ahead and have an end result of 44.1 kilohertz, which is CD quality audio recording. Now, the Focusrite Scarlett 2i2 is able to record at 192 kilohertz, and you can see that right here. Now, the higher that you put the sample rate, the bigger your digital file is going to be, and it's also going to go ahead and lower your input and output latency as well, which brings me to the topic of latency. So inside of your audio interface, there's going to be an analog to digital conversion, and there's going to be a digital to analog conversion. So basically inside of Ableton Live, you can see there's something called input latency. So that's going to be your analog signal being converted to digital. So that's going to be your input latency. And then there's going to be output latency. That's going to be your digital signal from your computer getting turned back into analog so you can hear it through your speakers. And then there's going to be the overall latency, which is going to be your input latency and your output latency added together. I know this is a lot to think about when you're first starting, but basically the overall latency is the amount of time it takes for you to strum your guitar, have that signal go through into your computer, go out of your computer into your speakers. Now, why is this important? This is important because if you have a really large latency, it's going to be hard to record inside of your digital audio workstation. Okay, and the reason why I say that is if you have a latency of 1 second, when you strum your guitar, it's going to take you 1 second to hear that guitar come into your ears from your speakers. And that's really going to mess you up when you're trying to record your guitar. So the less amount of latency you have, the better. Now you can see 7.8 milliseconds as an overall latency is not bad. But the issue you're going to run into is your computer might not be able to handle processing audio that quickly. And if it can't handle it, you're going to hear audio dropouts. You're going to hear pops and clicks in your audio while you're trying to listen to it. It's going to be a mess, and you're not going to be able to record properly. So what you might need to do is up your buffer size. So your buffer size is basically the amount of time the computer allows for processing, and it's measured in samples. So 64 samples is actually a really low buffer size, and your computer might not be able to handle that. So if it can't handle that and you hear a lot of clicking and popping, what you should do is just double your buffer size, and then you might hear less clicking and popping. What the trade-off is, your overall latencycycy is going to double when you double your buffer size. So therefore, you have to find a balance for what works for you. Now, your buffer size of 128 samples might not work for you either, so you might have to go even higher. And you can see, as I go higher, the overall latency goes higher as well. Now, I do want to say very briefly, another thing that's going to affect your overall latency is your sample rate. So if you double your sample rate, it's going to go ahead and half your latency. So if you look right here, I'm at 44 100. If I go to 88-200, watch what happens to the overall latency. It's going to go in half. So I recommend testing this out on your computer and seeing what works best for your system. And once you find out what works for your system, set it and leave it and do not change it. But in short, the faster your computer is, the better it's going to handle the audio processing, and you're going to be able to get your overall latency down. And I also want to note that the latency will vary from device to device, so just be aware of that as well. Now, I do want to remind you that certain interfaces like the Focusrite Scarlett 2i2 does have that direct monitoring, so you can monitor your mic directly without any latency, or you can monitor your guitar directly or your synthesizer directly with no latency at all. So that is a helpful feature to have on an interface. So keep that in mind when you're thinking about purchasing an audio interface. All right, so in this video, we definitely covered the basics of what an audio interface is and all the different components of an audio interface. Now, audio interfaces can go deeper. There are computer chips that you can get in here to run DSP effects, and you can do ADAT, and you can do SPDIF. There's a bunch of stuff that audio interfaces can do. That's beyond the scope of this video, but I hope you understand the basics of what an audio interface is at the end of this video. And if you do have any specific questions, leave them in the comments below. Remember to check the description of this video for the show notes. My name is Matthew. Continue creating music, and we'll talk soon.